You're listening to the Play Therapy Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks, your source for centered and focused play therapy coaching.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brenna Hicks, the Kid Counselor. This is the Play Therapy Podcast, where you get a masterclass in child-centered play therapy and practical support and application for your work with children and their families. In today's episode, I am answering a question from two listeners, actually. They wrote in about very similar topics. So I'm going to do a combo question and answer. And so you'll kind of see how they overlap, and you'll see that we can kind of do these together. So Brooke from Utah, Cheryl from California, thank you both for reaching out. Thank you for listening on the other side of the continental states. I appreciate all of my West Coast people. I'm an East Coast girl, but West Coast is beautiful. So thanks for reaching out and for sending in questions. So let me share with you what they each are asking, and then we'll kind of dive into specifics. So Brooke in Utah specifically is questioning what play therapy goals and objectives you document. So let me just read her a little bit of her email so that you get a sense of what she's wondering. So she says, I wonder what kind of play therapy goals and objectives you document and what kind of wording you use for goals in CCPT. The supervision I received was not specific to CCPT, so I feel like I need some guidance on wording these goals and objectives in notes to be reflective of what's happening in CCPT. We bill insurance, so I'm also wanting to know how much information you document in notes or if some of this documentation is in psychotherapy notes. So Brooke, thank you so much for reaching out about that. Cheryl in California said, I'm curious about how you go about diagnosing children for insurance reimbursement. I'm wondering if there are maybe 3 or 4 go-tos for you and how you write notes to support that diagnosis. So Cheryl, thank you as well. And I'm going to do this as a combo because there's so much carryover. So as far as goals and objectives that I document, so I think I need a couple of disclaimers first. So my first disclaimer is we do not bill insurance. We do not accept managed care. So we are private pay only. And not that that disqualifies me from answering. I'll give you my thoughts. I just want you to know I personally do not bill insurance and we are private pay only. So we do not keep electronic records. We do not submit for third-party paying. However, I think it's important for you all to know that we keep only paper records. So I think I've mentioned it before, but specifically about notes and all of that, we only keep paper records. So we have no electronic record keeping at all. And because we do not bill insurance and we don't do any third-party pay, it makes it easy for us to just keep paper files. And therefore, obviously we can't be audited because we don't have electronic records. And we can't be audited because we don't accept insurance. So it allows us to keep all of our psychotherapy notes handwritten on paper in files in a cabinet. And I think that that helps for our sanity's sake, quite honestly. We just write notes as we're playing and it just makes everything very succinct. I've actually had some questions come in about court and subpoenas and testifying and expert witnessing and all of those things. So I'll actually talk more about that in a future episode regarding those topics. But I want you to know we don't diagnose, we don't bill insurance, and we don't have electronic records. So that's just my disclaimer because I don't want you to think that I, have extensive background in this. I don't. But here's what I know. If I were to do any of those things, as far as goals and objectives, I would document the 4 universal outcomes of a child-centered play therapy approach because we have proof and we have evidence-based documentation that shows there are 4 universal outcomes of a child-centered model. So therefore, we know that the child is going to work on achieving these 4 outcomes. If you do not have any idea what I'm talking about, please go back. There's an episode where I talk about the 4 universal outcomes of play therapy. So of the child-centered approach specifically. So we automatically have those 4 universal outcomes that we can write down as goals and objectives because we know those are going to be achieved no matter what. So that's a really easy way to show support because every single kid is going to work toward those goals because they're universal outcomes, right? So my second thought is you want to document goals and objectives that show a progression through the 4 stages and the 4 phases of the child-centered model. So every child is going to progress through the stages and the phases. So again, if this is new, please go back. There's an episode. Everything I reference, if you have no idea, please know that you need to start at week 1 and go all the way through. Okay, so your progression through your stages and phases, say that fast, oh my gosh, you know that a child is going to go from the initiation phase to the resistance phase to the work phase to the termination phase. So that is easily documented as a goal, and it is easily proven that the child has met those objectives and goals, right? Same thing with the phases. So you're going to have easy documentation of aggression and work and all of that, right? So you have these opportunities built into this process to stay true to the model. And Brooke, you specifically said, I want my notes to be reflective of what is happening in child-centered play therapy. Well, these things are happening. We don't have to manufacture that they're happening. We don't have to add fluff to try to prove that they're happening. Kids progress through the stages and phases, and kids naturally acquire skills to get them to the 4 universal outcomes. So those are kind of your go-to. I mean, that's pretty standard, pretty obvious. You don't have to really think outside the box. Just put those as goals and objectives because you know they'll be met. Okay. You also want to show that you are looking for shifts within themes, because a child is inevitably going to make shifts within their thematic play. So that's another easy way to document progress, because if a child starts playing aggressively, the goal is to see shifts within the aggressive theme, which of course we will. So that's easy to document, easy to show that objectives are being met. And then finally, you want to have as a goal resolution of the presenting themes. So over the course of treatment, if the child starts playing out good versus bad, at some point you want to see the disappearance of that theme, showing and indicating that the child has resolved that thematic play. So obviously, as a child progresses through treatment, they have themes emerge and they have themes disappear. So that is what we're looking for, and therefore we can document that. And then therefore, when the theme disappears, we can show that that child has worked through that issue and there's been resolution. So that is how I would handle the goals and objectives to document. I would use what we already know is going to happen inevitably, and then it's not specifically aligned with that child's needs or presenting problems. In other words, if you start off with, I want to see a resolution of anxiety. I want to see an increase in self-enhancing behaviors. I want to see a reduction in aggressive behavior. All of those things will likely come, but that's going to be unique to every child. Every child is going to have different goals and objectives. And I'm not saying that's a problem. I mean, obviously we want our treatment to be client specific, right? So I'm not saying don't have any individualized goals, but it's far easier and you can consistently count on being able to prove that your treatment is working if you go with the more universal and standard shifts that take place as a child is in the child-centered model. So there are my thoughts, Brooke. I hope that's helpful. And let me circle back to Cheryl's question specifically, because she's saying, I'm wondering how you diagnose and what they might be and how you write notes to support the diagnosis. So as I mentioned, we don't diagnose. I'm actually very anti-diagnosis. And I talked about that in earlier episodes. You know, this is a permanent mental health record of a child. And my conscience just doesn't feel good about, I see kids as young as 2. And I would never, ever want to be the cause for a child trying to enlist in the military, or a child trying to get security clearance, or a child trying to get into a really prestigious university. And they look at a mental health record and they see that they were diagnosed with an anxiety disorder in elementary school. I just don't feel good about that. I know there's plenty of clinicians that think that diagnosis is an integral piece of what they do. So, if you're for diagnoses, we can agree to disagree there. But Cheryl, specifically to answer your question, here's my workaround, because I don't want you to think that, well, I'm never going to be able to, deal with insurance because they require a diagnosis. That's actually another reason why we don't accept insurance, is because they often insist upon a diagnosis, and I refuse to give one. However, we do provide super bills, and it's just a fancy word for out-of-network reimbursement paperwork so that clients can submit for reimbursement directly through insurance. Often, even for out-of-network reimbursement, they ask for not only the procedure code, but the diagnostic code. Here's what you need to know. You can always defer a diagnosis, and for out-of-network reimbursement, they'll accept it. So we are the master of seeing hundreds of kids a week and diagnosing none of them. And if asked for a diagnosis, we say diagnosis deferred. So I want you to know you have an option of a workaround. And some insurance companies are better about it than others. And, obviously we're not billing directly, we're doing out of network. So I can't speak to what that will look like for your practice. I just want you to know you can use V71.09, V as in Victor. You can use Z71.1, Z as in Zulu. You can use Z03.89. These are all diagnosis deferred codes. So if you have a child and you want to work with them and you want to bill insurance and you want to see if you can avoid making a more prominent and recognizable diagnosis, try a diagnosis deferred code, because it's saying, I'm acknowledging that I'm working with the child, but I'm acknowledging that there's no mental health disorder present, and I'm not making a diagnosis at this time. And we have found a lot of success with a diagnosis deferred scenario. So that is my take for Cheryl and Brooke. Thank you both for your questions. And I hope for all of you, a lot of you are going to end up having to document for something, right? So whether it's for managed care, whether it's for third-party payout, whether it's for reimbursement even, but maybe it's just for insurance as a whole. We have to be able to help someone from the outside looking in that wants proof that what we're doing is working. We have to be able to communicate that well. And what I believe is the easiest route is to put on their goals that we know we're going to achieve no matter what. So default to what the data has already proven. And then it doesn't really have to be that child specific, and we can document progress. And that's the beauty of the child-centered model. We're not putting a Band-Aid on a wound. If a child comes in scared to death of going to bed at night, if we use a different theoretical orientation, we would address their fear of going to bed. But 2 years from now, when they're scared of riding their bike to school by themselves, we only address the fear of going to bed. We never address the fear of everything else in their life. The world is scary. So the child-centered approach is a holistic, longitudinal gain. The child builds coping skills. The child builds resilience. The child builds regulation. The child builds self-confidence. The child builds a worldview. The child builds all these things. These are universal outcomes, right? They go through all of this and they gain so much. So let's document that. It doesn't have to be an anxiety-specific goal or objective. It would be the well-being of the child objective, right? And of course, look, reduction of self-defeating behaviors is inevitable over time. Reduction of anxiety is inevitable over time. But that's not what we're documenting. We're documenting the progress of all of this acquisition of skill across not only now, but their lifetime. So Brooke, Cheryl, thank you so much. I hope that was helpful to all of you. You can always reach me at Brenna@thekidcounselor.com. Check out Play Therapy now if you'd like additional training opportunities. And as always, I'm grateful for each and every one of you. We'll talk again soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Play Therapy Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks. For more episodes and resources, please go to www.playtherapypodcast.com.